So hello everybody, and thank you, Luca, for this introduction. And thank you, we would like to thank you, all of you, for joining us today. And yes, in this presentation, we are going to see the main features, the main news that we have introduced in this version of ntopng. So we are going to start this presentation with a quick overview of ntopng 4.0 in terms of numbers. Then we are going to discuss and see the motivation that drove us for during the development of this release. And then we are going to move and see with in detail the main breakthroughs that are shipped with this new release, that are basically a new look and feel, then many cybersecurity oriented features, active monitoring, and plugins. And then we are going to see briefly also other additional features and conclude this presentation. This presentation is going to take about 45 minutes. If you guys have questions, feel free to unmute your mic and ask. Maybe I would move, if possible, all the questions at the end of this presentation, so we can start maybe an interactive discussions on ntopng. All right. So some numbers. ntopng, we took about 1.5 years to develop this version of 4.0. So it has been a big effort for us, a lot of time spent, a lot of effort spent developing it. And just to give you an idea of the contributions that we have done, basically we are talking about almost 500,000 of lines of code in the community versions and a little in the professional enterprise version. So this means that a lot of work, a lot of contribution has been done for the community, and are oriented to the community. So in terms of motivation, let's start with some of the inner drives that led us to the development of this version of ntopng. First of all, we wanted to refresh its look and feel, because we wanted to provide a fresh user interface which is more optimized for widescreen with dark themes, and we are going to see these in a while. Then we focused a lot on cybersecurity, so with the aim of augmenting network data with other security intelligence indicators, behavioral analysis, these kind of things. We also wanted to simplify the analysis of heterogeneous traffic to allow the creation of on-the-fly dynamic interfaces with BPF-like filters, so a way to easily create dynamic interfaces. And we are going to see these in detail as well. We have also extended the support for active monitoring to also probe the network, to also probe the hosts to make sure they are active and are responding and are offering their services they are supposed to offer. And finally, we have also spent a huge effort to make ntopng 4.0 more extensible to facilitate community contributions, because as Luca said in the beginning of this meeting, we would like to receive more community contribution to ntopng. That has been, at least for now, ntopng has been a project with not many external contributors apart from us. So we wanted really to make it modular, make it extensible, so that other people can contribute to it. Okay, let's start with a refreshed look and feel. So what did we change in this release of ntopng? Well, the changes are basically three, I would say. We have created a top bar which is fixed now, and it always shows the key information of the monitoring and of the network. So as we can see from this image, we have a fixed top bar, which tells us the download and the upload traffic. It tells us how many hosts and flows are being monitored by this instance. And we can also search for hosts. So this bar is always visible and fixed. No matter how, if you scroll the page, no matter if you change the page, that bar is always visible. And then we also moved the menu bar from top to a left vertical menu bar. This is more optimized in terms of space, especially in wide screens. And we also introduced the concept of skins, the concept of themes. So now what you get actually with the version 4.0 of ntopng are 3 different themes that are available. The default theme, a bright theme, and a dark theme. There were people in the communities that was asking for these themes, especially the dark one, because many of our users spend hours and hours in front of the computers, in front of screens. So it was also an issue for them, for their eyes, to actually stare at a screen, at a white screen. So we introduced these 3 different skins for ntopng, and now you can choose one that better fits your need. All right, let's now have a look at how we focused on cybersecurity in this version, in this release. Well, as you all probably know, cybersecurity is increasingly relevant in any environment. So not only in corporate environments, but also in small and medium enterprises, homes. It's fundamental to protect the digital assets of our company, or the digital assets of ourselves, so our personal data, basically. And even if you're now, this data protection is also enforced by law, because maybe you have heard about the GDPR. So cybersecurity is important, and it has gained a lot of popularity. So it's really relevant. And at the same time, it's also not increasingly relevant, but it's also increasingly difficult. Because, for example, a large part of the traffic is now encrypted. So traffic which was plain text, such as HTTP, for example, is moving to TLS. So it's increasingly difficult to understand what's inside the TLS traffic. And the other reason, because it's difficult, it's because there's no longer a clear line dividing the good from the bad. You know, for example, that people now carry their own devices from home to the office. So that maybe an infected device easily connected to the network of the office, and it's not really easy to do something about it. So it's increasingly difficult. So what we wanted to do in this release, we wanted to start introducing some behavioral protocol analysis. So not yet things that are really fancy, really complicated, like machine learning. This is not our philosophy, at least yet. So we wanted to start introducing some behavioral protocol analysis, both for encrypted and non-encrypted protocols. So we want to identify behavior such as someone is uploading a large file on Dropbox. Someone is connecting to China during outside the business hours. Or a DNS traffic is containing malicious or suspicious names. Or again, this network traffic, even if it's encrypted, it belongs to an application which is, with a high probability, a malware application. Someone of you guys can you please check your mic to make sure they are muted? Thank you. And Yeah, so and we wanted to generate alerts when suspicious traffic is found. So again, the aim of these behavioral analysis are to assess how the protocols are used or abused, how they behave actually. And I would like to say that we do not decrypt encrypted traffic. The decryption, we believe, it's pretty impractical. It's an ad hoc solution that is not what we are trying to do or what we are interested in doing. So behavioral analysis means looking at the protocols, looking at how they behave to say something which is more or less accurate depending on the protocol. As part of this behavioral analysis, as part of this analysis, I would like to show you an example of the TLS analysis that we have introduced in the ntopng 4.0. Now the TLS analysis is very rich because we also we do a complete certificate analysis. So we dissect the certificates requested from the client and the certificates sent from the server to the client. We also dissect their validity and also other TLS parameters that allows us to identify how robust is the encryption used for a particular TLS. And we not only dissect this kind of information, we also create alerts when we detect that the TLS is having certain patterns that are suspicious. For example, in this screenshot, we see a couple of TLS alerts that involve flows, encrypted TLS flows that are using expired TLS certificates. So someone in the network is communicating using TLS, but with an expired certificate. So this can be a potential security issue, and that is for sure something that must be seen, that cannot go unnoticed in the network. Other alerts on the behavior of TLS that we fire are, for example, when we detect all the TLS versions, or when we detect TLS that are using unsafe ciphers, so with a weak encryption. Or we also alert when we detect certificates mismatches between client and servers in the TLS. So we tried, this is just an example of the TLS, but we tried to look at the behavior of the TLS to possibly create new alerts. In terms of other protocols, so not only for the TLS, we have also extended the alerts on the behavioral protocol analysis, not only for the TLS, but also for other protocols. Now we look at the contents of the DNS to make sure if the queries are good or bad according to certain criteria. We have alerts if we detect communications towards certain blacklisted countries that you can configure. Or we can create alerts if we detect that certain protocols are doing a lot of upload traffic. This is to connect to my examples of Dropbox before. If someone is uploading a large file on Dropbox, you will be able to receive an alert thanks to this kind of behavioral protocol analysis that we have implemented for the security of protocols. So this is basically, this is an overview of what we can do with in terms of security. Then there are also other things that are worth mentioning in terms of security that we have started working a lot to integrate with external vendors and with external software. So now we integrate with firewalls of SonicWall. We integrate with the intrusion detection system of Suricata, but unfortunately, there's no time to look into all these things now. But feel free to ask a question later if you are interested, of course. Yes. Okay, let's move now to the simplifying the analysis of heterogeneous traffic. As many of you guys probably know already, especially the corporate network traffic is often heterogeneous. What does it mean? It means that on the same wire, on the same line, and the same port, you find traffic which is a mix of many networks, of many departments, many branches, so employees, cores, guests, all the traffic is mixed together in a single line, on a single port. And that traffic can be logically divided depending on the environment, maybe with using VLANs or using subnets. So we wanted, and actually our users were demanding, were asking us a quick and easy method to be able to divide the traffic which is mixed into multiple subsets that are more homogeneous, that are meaningful. So just to give you an example, we wanted to create a mechanism, something easy to divide the traffic of a single interface into many multiple sub-interfaces, matching, for example, a criteria with a VLAN or with a subnet to divide the traffic of the employees from the traffic of the server, from the traffic of the guests, and from the other kinds of traffic. So the idea here was to create something simple to dynamically divide a mixed traffic into multiple sub-interfaces that are more meaningful for the analyst, because now we'll find more easy to do the analysis because the traffic that he is looking at is homogeneous. So the criteria that we can use are basically VLAN IDs, SNMP interfaces, but the way we allow you to create these dynamic interfaces is actually even more generic, because we allow you to create dynamic interfaces using BPF-like filters. So maybe, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Wireshark or with other network analysis tools. BPF filters are basically generic filters that allows you to specify certain pattern so that the traffic matching that pattern will end up in its own interface. In this screenshot, for example, we see two different sub-interfaces, one for the guests and one for the staff. What does it mean? It means that ntopng will receive traffic on the ENO1. It will try and match the incoming traffic according to the traffic filters that we see here. For example, net 192.168.10 and source VLAN. And when it detects that the traffic matches this filter, ntopng will automatically create the staff sub-interface and deliver all the traffic to that particular interface. So with one single real interface, you can create many multiple logical sub-interfaces dynamically to separate your traffic when it's mixed into multiple different sub-interfaces. Active monitoring. This is another another feature that we have introduced and that we would like to show you in this presentation. Active monitoring, why it's important, the active monitoring? It's important because in the networks, it's easy to have hosts in the networks that offer critical services. So think about backup servers or web servers or replication, VPN, NAS. Network have important hosts. So those hosts must always be operational, must always be up and running and fully functional. So we wanted to create something in ntopng to constantly probe these important hosts on a minute-by-minute basis. So we wanted to do this to check continuously their reachability and the availability of their services. So how we can do this kind of check? Well, we can ping hosts with ICMP and ICMPv6, and we can also do HTTP and HTTPS pings. So this means checking the host's IP reachability, but also checking the host's web services. So by doing HTTP and HTTP requests on a minute-by-minute basis, we can assess if the hosts are up, running, and they have active HTTP and HTTP services running. We not only monitor the reachability and availability, but we also monitor the round trip time, because as you know, round trip time is a pretty important metric to estimate, to evaluate the network and to evaluate the services, because an high round trip time very easily would becomes a poor user experience, so a poor quality of experience. So, well, in ntopng now you can monitor your hosts for ICMP, HTTP, and HTTPS. It's pretty easy to add them to the monitored hosts. So click on add, specify the type of measurement you want to do, name of the host, and you can also indicate a round trip time threshold. So this round trip time threshold is used by ntopng to generate alerts. This means that if the measured round trip time of this host is above the defined round trip time threshold, you receive an alert. If it's above, or if the host is unreachable, actually. So on a minute-by-minute basis, ntopng continuously monitors your hosts continuously measures their round trip times. It creates historical charts of the host round trip time, so you can go back in time and see what happens yesterday, 1 week ago, at a certain point in time. This is available. You have this kind of charts available. And maybe more important, you have alerts. So as soon as an host goes down, as soon as an host becomes slow from the point of view of ntopng, you are alerted. You receive alerts that appear in the ntopng web interface, but that you can also get via email or via Slack or via some other things. So this is what you can get in terms of active monitoring in ntopng. Now, in terms of extensibility, what is relevant in this 4.0 release is the work we have done towards the extensibility of ntopng. Because it's important, because we wanted to ease community contributions, because we believe that the software is really open source, not when it's on GitHub or not when it's free. We believe that a software is really open source when it's easy for it's easy for the community to take the software, modify the source code, change it, and redistribute it. So we wanted to make it more extensible, more easily extensible, to make sure the others could use it without a steep learning curve, basically. So how we work toward the extensibility of ntopng. To make ntopng more extensible, we basically redesigned its architecture. We took many of the functionalities that were implemented in its core, we took them out from the core, and we re-implemented them in Lua scripts that are what we called plugins. So the idea here was to rework the architecture of ntopng to make it more scalable and to make it more modular. So a small C++ core with a very, very limited set of features, and then plugins, one plugin for each thing. And plugins are very simple to be coded. They are just Lua scripts, so it's easier for people to contribute to plugins. And if you want to develop a plugin, you don't really have to recompile or do difficult things, because a plugin. What are the functionalities offered by the plugins? So plugins, you can think in terms of simple scripts that allows you to analyze hosts, flows, and other network elements. You can analyze network elements on a periodic basis, so every minute or every 5 minutes, or you can analyze hosts, flows, and other network elements on events. So when something happens, when something occurs. And there is a pretty clear API now that allows you to pull data from the core. So to read, for example, host and flows data, and to create a so network elements is only what you can do with plugins, because with plugins you can also extend the ntopng web interface to add your custom pages. You can also extend the ntopng web interface to add menu entries or to do additional active monitoring checks that for similar to what we have seen for the round trip time. Maybe you can write your DNS round trip time monitor. So you can do many things in a pretty simple way. And plugins are powerful also because can be configured from the web interface. So this means that once you have written your plugin code in a Lua script, if you want to change something, if you want to change the configuration of the plugin, you don't have to reopen the Lua scripts files and do additional code, because the plugin, once it's ready, it becomes available in the web interface of ntopng. And once it's available, you can interact with it using the graphical user interface. So you have a button edit, and you can enable, disable plugin features, configure thresholds. Everything can be done from the graphical user. Now, I wanted to show you a couple of examples of plugins, but actually that would take too much time. So let me show you here 3 references that you can use if interested in knowing more about plugins. We have a directory of examples, documentation, and also a YouTube video. That basically these 3 things is what is needed if you want to start doing your experiments with plugins. You can download the slides after the presentation, so don't worry if you don't have time to write those URLs down. In terms of other functionalities that we have introduced in ntopng, we would like to mention the multi-tenancy, because many of our users are service provided, so ISPs, WISPs, transit providers, that they have many customers and they offer services to many customers. So they wanted to use ntopng to offer the customer security services and alerts on security events and billing, basically. So we worked to make ntopng multi-tenant, to make sure that, given that certain users of ntopng can only see a subset of the whole ntopng traffic, of the whole traffic that is seen by ntopng. So this means that if I am an internet service provider and I have 10 customers, each one with a predefined subnet of address, I can create 10 ntopng users, one for each customer that I have, and I can specify the allowed networks of any customer, as we can see here. I can specify the allowed network of my customer, create the customer with a username customer, full name customer1. And then from this point on, my customer1 will be able to access the ntopng web interface, but its view, the traffic it can see, it's only limited to the network 192.168.1.0. So you can create many users, each one having access to a subset of the traffic. ntopng 4.0 is not only multi-users, but is also multi-language because it supports English, Italian, Japanese, German, Czech, and Portuguese. So at least English, Italian, and Japanese are very accurate translation. We are now waiting for the German translation, which is almost ready. So it's basically, it supports many languages, and we have received significant contributions from the community in terms of translation. So having all these languages, we need to thank our community, because otherwise it would have not been possible to have all these languages supported. Least but not last, in ntopng 4.0, you can find the traffic to process visibility. What does it mean? It means that you can associate flows with those originating processes and other process metadata. So this activity basically boils down to associating to any communication in the network, to associate a username, a process ID, and if you use containers, also the container IDs or other container metadata. So it adds to the context of the network also the context of who is responsible for the generation of a particular network traffic. And how we can do this? We do this when we connect ntopng 4.0 with nprobe agent. nprobe agent is a small piece of software, which we also like to call it a packetless probe, because it can extract network metadata without actually looking at packets. So here is an example of what you can get. If we look at this part of the screen, we see a flow, which is actually a malware flow. So we see that basically our host has tried to do an HTTP traffic, which has been categorized as malware. So at this point, the additional information that we add to this is that we combine the network traffic information with the username and the process name that are responsible for the generation of this traffic. This means that the root user of this machine has used process curl to download something via HTTP. So it's much more relevant and helpful for the analyst to have this information, because that allows you to find, it's easier for you to find the root cause of the problem, the real process that is creating troubles with malware traffic, for example. Well, it's time to wrap up for me. So yeah, releasing this version of ntopng has been a great effort for us. We've changed a lot, almost 500,000 lines of code, and it took almost 3 times the time it usually takes for us to do a release. So it has been a very big effort. In terms of main features, main changes, we have seen a renewed look and feel with dark themes and a view which is optimized for widescreen. We have seen that it has a strong focus on security, with not only blacklists, but also with behavioral traffic analysis for both encrypted and non-encrypted network traffic. There is also the active monitoring that if you use active monitoring, you can check your hosts and services to make sure they are active and behave as expected. And eventually, we have also reworked the core. We have also reworked the architecture of ntopng to make it more pluggable to ease the contribution of the community. So this concludes my presentation, and now I would like to hear from you your thoughts, or if you have any questions. I'm here with Luca and the other guys of ntop, and we would like to hear from you and possibly respond to the questions that you may have. And for now, I would like to thank you for your time, and so feel free to unmute the mic and ask the questions that you might have.
Colleagues,
Hello.
thank you for your presentation, Luca and Simone. My name is Carl Ace, and my question is, can you explain the configuration for cloud environments? Is it still as effective for cloud environments or only for on-premise solutions? Did you get my question?
Do you mean in terms of deploying the software on cloud environments, or to analyze the traffic of cloud environments?
Yes, both deploy and analyze and report.
Okay, I mean, the software ntopng can be deployed on Docker. So in cloud environment, in containerized environment, it's not that hard to deploy ntopng. It also features a pretty easy way to export its configuration. So you can configure ntopng, export a JSON file with the configuration, and then you can reimport that JSON file in the cloud to configure many instances at the same time. So it's pretty easy to deploy it, maybe on Docker or on virtual machine, but you can deploy it on Docker. And then using the export and import of configuration, you have also a pretty effective way to clone and replicate multiple instances of ntopng. Does this respond to your question?
Thank you, it does.
Hello. My name is Eugene Prohorenko. I am from Armenia. And I have at first a question. What do you think is a big company or small company? Where is the border between these two cases? Thank you.
Well, I think that your question is oriented in terms of traffic. So maybe is a company from a few megabits per second to 100 megabits per second, and then maybe we go above with a gigabits traffic per second.
I think my question is about number of hosts in the network.
Okay, and well, this actually depends also on the type of company, because maybe if you are a small ISP, you will still have many hosts, even if you are small. But if you would like, what I can tell you is the number of hosts and flows that ntopng can handle per interface. That I think that could be even more helpful for you as a response. Well, a single instance of a single interface of ntopng can handle, let's say, 1 million of flows, active flows, and a few 100,000 of active hosts in a single interface. So if you have many of them, if you have more of them, you can create multiple ntopng interfaces, because ntopng is a highly multi-threaded. So it can exploit very well the multi-core architectures of the modern machines. So it scales basically. If you need more hosts and more flows, you create multiple interfaces. So ntopng scales, it uses more core, and you scale up with your hosts. And
okay, in fact, my company is a scientific research company, and we have at the moment more than 5,000 hosts, and we have some gigabit of external traffic. And in this configuration, it is hard to understand how to have in fact, I have only one interface for all this traffic. From your words, I think that this is not a good idea. And for example, if I have some exporters, for each exporter, I can create the different interface. Is it correct?
Yeah, it's correct. And let me take again the slide that we have seen. What you can do is actually use the mechanism that we have seen during this presentation, that is the mechanism of sub-interface. So what you can create is one sub-interface per exporter. See here, we have criteria such as net flow, flow, exporter IP address. So if you have multiple exporters that are exporting toward your ntopng, using these sub-interfaces, you can create dynamic interfaces depending on the exporter that is sending you the traffic. And if you want some numbers in terms of how many flows per second it can handle ntopng, I can tell you that a single interface of ntopng can handle approximately 100,000 flows per second. So 100,000 new flows per second continuously arriving can be handled with a single interface. And with this custom traffic disaggregation, you can easily create one sub-interface per exporter.
Okay, but maybe it will take the situation that the same traffic will be calculated by several exporters.
Yeah, in that case, there are no dedupe mechanisms, so you are going to see the traffic multiple times. If multiple exporters sends the same traffic multiple times, you are going to see it multiple times.
So also my other idea that I have two ntop, and one ntop is for exporters to the outside, and one ntop is for internal networks. It will not help.
I mean, that if one exporter only look at the traffic that enters and leaves your network, so from and to the internet, basically, yes, that can help, because one exporter will only look at the traffic which goes to the internet, and the other exporter will only look at the traffic which stays inside the network. So those two traffics are disjoint. So in this example, you won't have anything replicated.
I just remember the times when I worked with the old versions of ntop, and it was very simple because you only have one router in the network, and it has two interfaces, and you configure your configuration is very simple. So now we can work with these VLANs, as you told. But what about tunnels? Is there possible to have to see how tunnels are working?
How tunnels are working? What do you mean?
I mean, where can I see that traffic inside the tunnel? How can I calculate it?
So you want to detunnel the traffic, basically?
no. For example, I have some customers which are not directly connected to my network, and they are going through the transit network. And in this case, I even can't to assign my customer on the transit network to one subnet. How can I manage this situation?
No, I don't really think to understand your question. Maybe let's move forward. Let's and maybe you can drop us a message on Telegram with examples, because I don't really think that I get your question. I don't know if Luca wants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's take the question at the end. I would like to first complete my presentation, and then, you know, if there are technical questions, we take that at the end. I see there are a couple of questions on the chat, so let me finish. I have just 3 slides and I'm done. Let's talk about the future, okay? What about version 4.2? At the moment, ntopng, as I said, it is able to integrate with external tools, but we want to push even further this integration. And today, Suricata, for instance, it is able to send the signature-based alerts to ntopng. ntopng can correlate them with traffic. So therefore, this allows us to bridge security based on signature with traffic visibility. And we want to push even further because, in particular, in these days where the infection is creating huge problems and people stay home to work, we want to bridge this with other sources of information. Typically, we see people asking us to integrate with firewall devices. So, for instance, you have a VPN concentrator, and network administrator are losing visibility because the IP addresses are not longer distributed by the HCP or similar protocols, but they're distributed by a VPN concentrator. So what we have developed and will soon be released is an extension for ntopng that allows us to map a certain flow to a user. This means that we are going towards identity management or identity monitoring. So it allows us to say, okay, these are the assets belonging to Luca, even though Luca connects from remote. So the plan is to make it for popular devices such as Fortinet, Sophos, SonicWall, this type of devices. And this for the ingress. And for the egress, we want, like I've said, create ntopng, or envision ntopng as a gateway that allows to feed other applications such as Wazoo, that is a pretty popular security application, so that we can really complement, you know, what others are offering with what we are doing. This allows us, for instance, to go and drill down, especially for security analysis, down to the problem. In particular, for monitoring, hosts, because host-based ADS are becoming more and more important because we don't often have enough visibility, especially in switched networks. So therefore, agents such as Wazoo, or for instance, the ntop agent that Simone has described before, are becoming important to give us more visibility about who is generating such traffic, and if the traffic is malicious, what is the application and what is the path on the file system that has generated that. And talking about visualization, we believe that ntopng, as a nice GUI, is probably not the best one on the market for sure. We plan to extend it. But the idea is that data analysis is not optional. Visibility and data visualization can be optional inside ntopng, but not data analysis. So therefore, what we want to do is we want to export data in a way so that it's graphically easy to report, and that allows us to use ntopng as a source of data. So at the moment, for instance, with Grafana, you can use ntopng as a writer to InfluxDB, and Grafana reads from InfluxDB. You can create very nice dashboards, but we want to go even further. And the idea is not to take the path of Grafana, Influx, or others, but actually go the opposite way. It means that instead of locking our users inside a user interface, we want to allow ntopng to export data in a way using HTML tags similar to those that you can find, for instance, on YouTube when you want to embed a video on a page, so that you can embed in your existing monitoring tools data coming from ntopng, either graphically, so you can see, let's say, a pie chart, so with the traffic distribution over something, with alerts that ntopng is reporting, or use ntopng as a source of data, so just JSON export. And this, we believe, is the best way, because we think that freedom means that everybody should use its own tool. We should do our own job. That means we have to analyze network traffic data, and we have provide information. So if people want to use our user interface, fine, we're glad of that. Otherwise, if people want to use third-party tools, this is also possible. And talking about more open source integration, the next one that will be released by the end of this month is CheckMK, that is a popular, at least in Europe, replacement for Nagios. And this is one of those that we have in mind. Last year, we have done Isinga, so we want to do many others. So because the idea is that, like Simon said, that we don't want to be open just in source code, but also open in data exchange. That is very important. Talking about something a bit sad is the ntop conference. So we scheduled the yearly conference in Milan for June, but unfortunately we have to cancel it because of this COVID virus. So one of the things that we have on the table is either to postpone it or to make it virtual. And we would like to hear what you think, at the end of this session, so that you can also tell us what you think about that. For sure, we don't want to wait until 2021 for a meeting. In the past, we have done some sort of meetup, at popular conferences such as the SharkFest Wireshark conference. But we understand that this year is not the right time for traveling, so probably this year we have to find a different setup. So your opinion would be valuable. And then my last slide is to remind you that we have some Telegram groups, either in English or Italian for the Italian community, Italian-speaking community, where we meet people ask us questions, so they have prompt support. Also, they share ideas or other things that want to discuss with us. This is very important for us because we need feedback. This is what we are missing many times, because we are developing tools based on your input. But sometimes the feedback is valuable, so we kindly ask you to subscribe to the community Telegram groups if you want, so that we can all be in touch. Talking about the webinar, so today we have done these experiments. It's the first time we are doing something like that, and I would like to understand from you what's your idea. For sure, one of the things that we have in mind is to do periodically, bi-weekly or monthly online meetings, where we would like to discuss one topic, do free training on something very vertical. So, for instance, let's talk about cybersecurity, or let's talk about services. Because what Simone said, for instance, is that with the multi-tenancy support of ntopng, it allows many people to create services, so that with one single ntopng instance, you can serve some of your customers. So if you are an ISP, for instance, you can monitor your traffic, and you can ask for a monthly fee to your customer. The visibility of the traffic that today is not provided by anybody besides simple bytes and packets. Here we are talking about something very vertical. So I would like to hear from you what you think about that. If you believe training is a good idea, or if you just want to have some chat, if you want to say, okay, I want to have a session where we discuss about some problems I experience, you show me your screen, I will tell you what to do, things like that, talk with the expert, something like that. So this is very important. But I now let you speak, because this is what I want to do. I first want to answer a couple of questions that are waiting on the chat. Okay, so the first question is that let's talk about hardware. Okay, let's talk about what is the best hardware to use for ntopng. It depends on the network size and speed. Let's say that today every modern hardware is adequate for monitoring, let's say, a mid-sized network. Let's say up to 1,000 hosts for sure. Actually, one of the things we have developed is ntopng for Raspbian. So therefore, you can put it on a Raspberry. So if you have a home network or a small SME, this is perfectly adequate. So, and from this, you can scale up. So if you go to our blog, you will see that we have a report that has been presented at the FOSDEM conference, where a single ntopng machine can monitor, I think, at least 50,000 local hosts plus many international hosts at the Munich Technical University. So there is no single answer to your questions. So if you want, you can contact me in private and ask me exactly what you need for your setup. And Douglas is asking whether we are working at the PDF format. No, we are not working at that, but we'll be working at that soon. because we have a new guy that joined our team, Gabriele, that is specialized in user interface and this type of things. And we believe that with his help, we can finally implement that because it is very long time people are asking that. There's another question: can we review, pick up, capture traffic, and extract files from there? No, you cannot do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to become an IDS. But like I've said, what we have done an integration with Suricata. Suricata, for instance, can extract files. Another thing that we have discussed with the core light people, so the bro Zik guys, if you want to talk to them, is the integration with their tools. I don't know, if this will happen through us with them, or otherwise if we have to go on our own. We definitely want to talk with third-party tools. So this means that we don't want to re-implement inside ntopng nice features such as file extraction. But if you want to do that, we want to integrate with Bro. So this is something that we can do. We can probably take it offline as a question, but an integration is definitely what we have in mind, but not to implement inside ntopng this feature. Okay, visual conference would be great. Oh, thank you for the suggestion. So a monthly meeting, I see. Okay, webinars. Okay, so webinar in the form of training. I mean, so the format we have in mind is not commercial. We don't want to sell you anything. This is. I want to be clear on that. We just want to train people to use our tools, and this is what we want to do. Simone, do you want to say something about other things, or anybody else has a question? Want to turn on the microphone and ask?
Okay, so I have a very short question. You have in the ntop table for MAC addresses, and for now I do work by hands to connect the MAC address to the IP address. Is it possible to have a feature in the ntop which will do this automatically?
What do you mean exactly, connect the MAC address with the IP address?
Because, for example, if I have switches on the network, they have MAC addresses, but I don't know what switch name it is. So I just do it manually, and I think it is not a good idea.
Okay, we have some features that allows you to map data, so you can put an alias. If you want, we can take this question offline, and I can show you on the ntop how to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions?
How many of you guys would be interested in writing a plugin? Are you basically all users, or someone of you guys would like to try and write a plugin to experiment the latest features?
Hi, this is Ron Henderson from the United States. I hope that your family is well, and thank you very much, Simone and Luca, for the presentation. Could you, now that we're going, it looks like you're going to be opening up more ntop more to the community, talk about best practices in the API, for instance, give examples, good examples of what you think this is the proper way to extract data from the ntop running instance, and also versioning, so that when new versions come out that we're consistent in terms of knowing that at least the either plugins or extraction code that we write will be consistent with that version. Things like that would be helpful, I think. It's not for the writing the plugins, but it's the other way we're getting data out of ntop. Okay. You can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the best and most stable way to get data out of ntopng is to use the REST API. So there is a REST API available, which is not, I mean, it does not yet provide everything, but it's pretty, I mean, it provides enough things. So the best way is definitely to use the API. As Luca said, the API, it's been also used to write the checkmk plugin, and very likely it will require to be extended. But REST API is definitely the thing to do to get data out of ntopng. So if you find it's incomplete or if it has missing things, send us a request and we will extend it. It's also documented, so you can visit the ntopng documentation page, REST API, and you will get enough documentation to start extracting data from it.
Simone, there are other questions here on the chat. The first question is about the Endbox. Yes, the Endbox is still available, but we want to discontinue. I tell you the truth, because the Endbox was designed for doing very specialized configuration of drivers, processes, and everything. And for many people, it is too complicated. The plan is that I hope by the end of the spring or at latest early this summer, to integrate inside ntopng the ability of configuring things like mprobe or the system itself, the IP addresses and everything in a very simple way. Because the problem of the Endbox is that it is very powerful, but it is too complicated. People get lost. So we want to have something simple so that, say, okay, configure ntop and mprobe to collect flows from a Cisco router and show them on the screen, or things like this is a port mirror. I want to see data out of it. Things like that. It has to be simple, and the Endbox, unfortunately, is complicated. I see people, and thank you, Douglas, for asking about the plugin. People want to contribute. This is something we want to do. So probably one of the first webinar would be to educate you to plugin and to hear from you, because release 4 has been a big change, and probably we have to do some update in the API. So yes, this is something we do. So thank you for doing that. We want to create an ecosystem, a sort of, let's say, I don't want to call it a shop, because they don't have necessarily to be charged for people using the plugin, but I want to have a system where people can click and say, okay, there is a plugin, let's say, for BGP integration. Okay, click, and then you have the plugin installed in your ntop, and that's it. Something very simple, something like that. So this is something we are doing. Okay, so thank you, Yuri. So you want to participate to webinar? So we'll inform you on the Telegram group about future events, of course, on your blog, and so everything from your side is welcome. And there is another question from Omar about TLS encrypted traffic. So let's say what Simone said is that we don't want to decrypt traffic. Okay, so this is definitely not what we want to do, because decrypting the traffic doesn't mean that we are doing a better job. Actually, it's the other way around, because if the traffic is encrypted, there is a reason for that. So the traffic has to stay encrypted, but we want to detect anomalies and problems and malware. So if you look at the latest NDPI, for instance, you will see that inside NDPI, so we calculate, for instance, entropy, that it's a metric that allows us to understand whether certain traffic that looks, let's say, special, okay, is really normal or not. Just to give you an idea, I started this webinar talking about the DNS or HTTPS. So the question is, what about this communication? Is this a standard TLS communication where people are, let's say, watching video, or they're accessing the web, or this is DNS over TLS communication that is probably not what I want to have on my network, because people are circumventing my security features. So this is more or less the idea. So yeah, let's leave the traffic encrypted for a second. Simone, do you want to answer the next question?
Oh, let me see. Yeah, I see here we have a question of the monitoring network performance in round trip time, and Omar is asking if we do support BGP. Well, we have a plugin in nprobe which speaks BGP, so which establishes a peering session with with another BGP router, and it extracts routes. And that this plugin also sends the results, so it also sends the routes to ntopng. So definitely writing a plugin for this is doable. Of course, ntopng needs to be extended to keep all the routes in memory and to check for changes. But I think it's an interesting thing what you've mentioned here, because as soon as you detect a route change for an important route, maybe you can receive an alert, and that would be important, at least for ISPs, I think. If you, Omar, if you are still here, Omar, and you want to give your use case, maybe it would be great. But yes, we can. It's something that is doable. Yeah.
And where we can download the presentation?
We put the video and the presentation available to everybody on our blog, on YouTube for the video, and for the presentation also on the Telegram chat. So all these channels. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
I see there is another question from Sumita. He says, is it best to have ntopng running inline or have a port spanned to it? So ntopng per se is offline, so it only works passively. It only looks at the traffic passively. You can use a port span, you can use a tap, or you can use NetFlow as flow, but it's still passive. If you want something that can run inline and so also enforce certain traffic filtering policies, then we have another tool which is called NEdge. NEdge is basically a fork of ntopng which operates inline. So it provides you the features of ntopng plus inline filtering. So you can decide, I want to block Facebook, I want to block BitTorrent, I want to block traffic, and I want to block malware traffic, or I want to shape to reduce the bandwidth to up to 1 megabit per second. You can do these kind of things if you use NEdge. ntopng, on the other end, is purely passive. It only looks but does not touch the traffic. Are you able to give some documentation or more example for BPF? Sure. Let me get them. Okay. So this is the tool that we use for the BPF. So yeah, do you mean the eBPF for the analysis of processes, or the BPF to create sub interfaces? What do you mean, Kafui?
Someone show your screen, please.
I sent the link in the chat. Okay, let me show. Okay, all right. Okay, so this is the tool, what we have called the packetless agent, the packetless agent. This is what it allows you to extract process and user metadata from the traffic. So this is what allows you to combine network traffic with metadata. Here we have an example that shows you all the extra information that can be added to the network traffic. This is a particularly complex environment where you have containers and pods, and thanks to this ntop agent, you can get the metadata associated to this traffic. So what you can see here is you can have the source container and the source pod, and the source container and the source pod associated to this particular network traffic. So this is very, very useful because especially in containerized environments, network traffic, you have many containers on the same machine. So what happens is that the network traffic does not even get to the network because it stays inside the machine because multiple containers communicate each other. So using this tool, you get visibility of how the containers communicate together, even if the traffic does not reach the network. Yeah.
Hello, this is Timur speaking from Germany. Hello. Hi, Simon. Hi, Luca. I have one question as well. I mean, if I look at the specification and the feature set of ntopng, it includes also network traffic recording. So what type of network traffic recording is part of ntopng? Is that the end-to-disk or is that something different? And the question would be the combination of end-to-disk with ntopng, how does that work? Can you say something to this?
Yeah. So yeah, ntopng integrates with ntodisk for the recording of traffic and the extraction of the recorded traffic. So it's you basically configure ntopng to record the traffic and to interact with ntodisk, and then you can look at the traffic, you can look at the monitored data, and you will find a download button that automatically will deliver you the recorded traffic matching the criteria of the chart that you see. So this is pretty powerful because you start using ntopng, you drill down the data, you look at what you're interested to, drill down, select an host, select the traffic of a given host, select certain flows, a very restricted period of time. So you have a great flexibility using to drill down what you are really interested into. And then eventually, at the very last point, you can click download and extract a pickup of the packets that have generated, that match the filter that you have generated. This is important because looking at packets in real environment where you have 100 of megabits per second, it's really complicated. It's really complex because we are talking about a million of packets per second. So it's something that it's not doable. You need ntopng to filter and drill down and reduce as much as possible the domain of action. And then eventually, as the last step, you click download and you get the pickup.
Right, but do you support BPF filter
yeah.
when and extracting the data out of ntopng? Okay.
Yeah. Here we are. Can you see the screen?
Because this is a feature of end-to-disk, I know, but I know under ntopng it was not supported, I think.
Here we are inside ntopng. Yeah?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, here we are inside ntopng. So you specify the BPF filter in ntopng that is told to the end-to-disk extraction, and you will get the result matching the filter.
Okay, but the job is being done by end-to-disk, I guess.
The extraction, the actual extraction, yes, is done by end-to-disk.
Okay, so is end-to-disk part of ntopng or needs that to be?
No, it's an external software, but it integrates with end-to-disk. So provided that you have end-to-disk and end-to-disk is licensed,
Right.
ntopng interacts with it.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are not other questions, I think that it's time now to wrap up, because it's more than the hour that we thought it would be necessary. So like I've said, we thank you for being here. So we invite you to subscribe to the Telegram group or send us mail if you have questions. I will share the video and send the link, put the link in the blog and on the Telegram group as well for slides. Thank you very much for being here, and see you at the next webinar that I believe it will be soon, according to what you suggested us. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.